In this video help, we're going to be covering the property listing. We start out on the customer screen, and what we're going to do is we're going to move to a listing uh, based on a property that this client would be interested in purchasing, and we're going to go through some of the steps that are related to both the showing and to the actual property. So let's go to the property listing by clicking on this button. In the property listing screen is a reverse button that takes you back to the customer screen. On this screen, you'll notice the first thing is that the customer that we were dealing with came over with the information here. This can be changed if you wanted to go to a different person. You could put it in there as far as this particular property is concerned. As far as what they're doing is looking at making an offer, or they're in the process of considering this property. So in this case, I have 3 sample records and I picked the one, and it came over and she's a buyer, and it could change depending on the information. You can see where we added the buyer seller over here on the other screen. Now also the status in this case was a follow-up, and you have the follow-up and information the same you have on the customer screen. When you change it here or change this here, it also changes it back on the customer record, and that's the one thing I want to point out. When you come to this screen and you're going to add a new listing, you would click on the new button and everything would go blank here. And what you'd basically do, you could use an MRLS record to fill in the information that it goes in here, or the narrative about the property, the details, like 2-bedroom, whatever. In this screen, I didn't have that, so I didn't copy it from the MRLS. And in this particular case, this is the MRLS for this particular record. It's a URL from a browser, and what I did is I copied a URL that had multiple listings for all states in the Union. And basically you can go there and you can look up a city and see any of the listings in that city regardless of the broker who is managing it. If it's listed, it's in the MRLSs and you can go find it. You can pick whatever URL you want. You could pick your own local or whatever MRLS that you want and put it in there. And you can also do this. You could be on one record, you could have one in there, and you can put a different one in on a different record depending on what your needs are. In this particular case, this particular property is number one of as many as that would be added to the property listings. This sequence number will continue on each property. As you add the next one, it would go to 2 and so forth. So this is something you can't change. It is assigned to the record, and it's the linking file from the main screen so that we have that information available in this screen. Now this is the property that we would be listing, and we'd add in the address, the city, the town, the state or province, the zip code or postal, the MRLS number based on the property that's actually being shown, and this would be that number coming from the MRLS listings, the listing broker, and the broker phone. If you needed to know the agent, you could go down and you could put the agent in here. If that's important to you, you could put the listing agent in here. And that way, if you're looking through the records, especially if it's in your own or another agency, you would know who the agent or the selling agent is. Let's go ahead and go through the rest of this. On the main page, you would have the contract date, and this is basically the date that the MRLS was listed, and the end date for the period of it. Now, if this was your own listing, this would be the start date of your listing and the end date of your listing. So those would be in there like they're supposed to be. You would list the square footage, the dwelling age, the listed price, and over a period of time you may have to add a reduced price if the property is listed long enough. You would add in all the detailed description of all the items, and then appropriately what you want to do is check all the boxes that have the property information in them here, so that if you are out in the field, you can do a find. Now in a find, if you're looking for certain properties, what you would do is go ahead and use the find from the do action, start the find, and you can put check boxes in, or checks in the boxes for all the items that the person has said that they want. Fireplace, TV wired into the home, and so forth. Then when you do the find and say finish the find, only those properties with those elements listed in check boxes in the other screens would come up. So it's a very nice way to separate the different properties. You can also put in the city, for example, where they want to be listed, and city and zip code, which would narrow the search down even further, so that you're looking at the city, the zip code that they want to be in, then the properties that fit. And even this field where you have narrative up on the top, if there's something that's not shown here and it is up on the top, and you want to also look for that, this will all be blank at the time you're doing the find. You could put that word or phrase in there, and it would also consider that in the search and even narrow the search down even further. And you can also do and this is explained on the frequently asked questions, how you can narrow down any numeric value, either being a date or a numeric value. Say, for example, they only want to look at houses that are less than 500,000, but not greater than a certain amount. Okay, so you could put a range in there, and that's explained in the FAQs. There's some videos there that tell you how to do finds, and you can check those out on the main support site. Now, to get on with this, let's go ahead and take a look at the next screen. There is a set of photo screens in here, and I can just flip over to one here. Let's go back over to this one. You can see that you can have these pictures, and you put your narrative description in here of what it is. Of course, this is a house under construction, and you're putting in the different things like the west view and the kitchen and so forth. And you can have as many of these as you want, an infinite number if you actually wanted to. And if you wanted to view that particular set of views, you can click this button. It'll take you to the portal to show you those views. It does include a size of photo, and this is something that goes back to the older iPads and iPhones that had limited amount of memory. Most people don't know this, but when you take a picture with the iPad or iPhone, it actually smalls the actual size of the file down so that you don't use a lot of space on your iPad or iPhone. And if you try to take the same picture off of your iPad or iPhone, it's going to be that reduced amount. In this particular case, it's showing the size of the file in kilobytes. So you can see that it's smaller than you imagined. And of course, it'll work faster if these photos are smaller when you're searching for stuff or open up screens, so it doesn't have to wait for them. There is a comment area to the right side, so you can comment about the different pictures over here. And for example, if you're doing description here, garage, this would be the front of the house, and if you want to make comments about it, you can go ahead and put those in there as well. Let's go ahead and go to the next screen. This is for the property offer. Now, with the property offer, the unique thing about this application is that you can do multiple offers, like we were doing back on the address screen, and you're putting in an offer or something like that or another part of the screen. In the offers, this is a portal, so you could approach this with multiple offers. And every time you add a character, for example, I added this one in, it's going to allow you to have an additional record on the next screen when you start to fill it out. So you just add something into the screen, it'll start moving on. Let's talk about how this is actually put together. You can see that there's a finance and sale, there's a payment calculation, and a data portal, which we're going to discover how those work in a few minutes. But what you would do in here is you would go ahead, if the property's been reduced, you would put the reduced price in here, because that's what we're actually quoting against. The first thing that would happen is the buyer is offering 412, and this is 421. So basically the seller's property counter is going to come back if there is a counter. If it's not, it's going to be for the full value. And what it's going to do is going to take these two and calculate the difference between them. And then the seller's earnest money, which there's typically always something they're going to put for down or earnest money. In this case, they have a $40,000 requirement by the seller to put down, and the buyer came back and said, no, I only want to put down $30,000. Now this only comes into play if this is a seller-owned property and they're going to finance it themselves. I don't think most owners would care how the bank's going to manage the earnest money. It's really up to the financing and how that works, and the bank's going to kind of dictate that. Now, in some cases, a client who's a buyer may come in and have a bank that already gave them a budget at a maximum amount and a certain amount down and a certain amount that they're pre-approved for. In this case, they're pre-approved for 310, so they're going to come up with a difference as they're down. So this is a limiting factor on the buyer about how much money they have to come in with. This may be what the seller's asking for, but in real worlds, that's what the actual buyer is going to offer. So what we end up with is a situation where the buyer has their first note that they've already got set up, and it's going to be for 310. And in this particular case, they came in with a buyer second for the 428,000. Apparently that's going to be the whole loan. I don't remember when I did these what it actually turns out to. So it's 418 is what it is. So that covers the actual amount that they're going to finance. They have the down payment of 30,000. So what you're looking at is the 310, then a second of 108. And it's 310, and the difference between the 108 and the 30 is 78. Now, if you had a different set of loan structures where the owner is going to carry a certain amount, or there's another loan that's in the thing, maybe coming from the family, where they're going to give you cash to help buy a home, and or there's a real estate property where there's a actual trade for a trade value of a piece of property, then that would be listed here, and then it would be considered part of the down where you would put it in here as far as the actual value. It would give you the summary, and then the downs will reduce the amount on the summary total here based on what is in this column. So over here you're seeing where it says earnest money, if there is any amount down on the first and then the second, then earnest money again for the amount of down on the owner carry, earnest money on the amount of down other, and then real property, the value of the actual property is agreed to by the agent, broker, and seller in the deal. So that's the negotiated price. And then what happens over here is these are the loan amounts that are the carried over balance. So this is what you're going to be financing, 388,000 based on an initial 418 minus the 30. So if this property is the way you're going to offer, you can go ahead and offer that way. But if you had a different kind of an offer, you could leave the original one and then come down here and do a response offer based on a seller counter offer, and do something completely different and come back at it a different way. And you can do that for an infinite number of these for this particular property. Now, each one of these that is carried where one of the agents has put something in this record based on this client would be shown here when you look at that client on this listed property. So you can see what somebody's actually offered, and the notes here would be, if this is for Bill Holland and he made this offer as a buyer, then this is his. Then you would go to the next one and so forth. If somebody else had made a different offer on the same property, a different agent, then you would put that into the notes on the next record down here. Or you can do Bill Holland one way, another way, and make notes in the notes about the different offers, and then finally the one that either was accepted or a final denial. Okay, let's say that this one is actually accepted, and we have a seller who has declared that he doesn't want you to move in before a certain date, and the buyer wanted to move in by the 1st, but the seller says November 23rd. Then that comes to an agreement where you'd put the notes in, and maybe there's some kind of an offset of certain days or weeks or whatever. Then there would be the brokerage percentage rate for selling the home for the commission, and then there would also be the actual value of the brokerage fee for 25,080 that comes out of the loan. These are the different costs that are going to be either paid by one or the other, the seller or the buyer, as negotiated. And then you have the seller's loan cost as far as the loan itself, the seller's loan balance actually. So there'd be a loan balance of 100,000, the differential, and then the seller's net amount of what the seller would actually get. So this is what the seller would actually see, would be the 292,920 based on the fees and the loan balances and so forth. And of course, that's whatever's negotiated during the period of the actual setup for the loan. If you have any questions about how this works, I would like you to call me or contact me through the support site and ask your questions. Let's go to the next part, the finance. In this particular case, what we're doing is we're really tracking who is doing what with whom. In this particular case, the seller, this should actually come in to having a sum of finance over here. It should have the the 388,000. So let's go ahead and put the 388,000. Actually, it's supposed to come over. I'll find out later why it didn't. But the best escrow company is who's going to manage this particular escrow. And they're going to start the escrow on the September 30th and finish it by October 24th is what their goal is. If there was a lawyer involved, you'd have the lawyer company, the date that they did their work, and the end date that they did negotiations for you as their client. And in this case, it would be the lawyer used and the lawyer company. It might be Edwin, whatever his name is, and the company. Then there would be the banks. For example, on the first note, you put the bank in here. You'd put the first note was applied for on this date, and it was approved on this date, and then it was funded on this date. And then you would carry all those different things as far as the a second note and so forth, and put those in there. The bottom ones would be an owner carry or a bank funding other or a family type of a situation where that would be over here and indicated how those were being handled by the owner carry type of situations. Or a banker-owned type of a property where they have special needs or issues that you have to do that would be carried in the carry information over here on this side, so that you'd have all the narrative and everything that needs to be shown to explain how this financing is being done. On the next page and tab, let's go over there. What this is this is the first loan amount. In this particular case, the loan amount was $388,000. $388,000, and what that will do as soon as you put that amount in there, it will go ahead and it'll start calculating based on the amount of the interest for the loan. And in this case, that particular payment is calculated on a 360-month basis, and it comes out to $1,742.29 per month. And if there was a second loan on the entire amount, then you would enter that amount. This may be $310,000, and the second one's $108,000. So you would put that in there appropriately the way it is if it was for a different kind of a balanced loan. So we do $108. So you see what it actually should look like. So what it does is it ends up by coming up with $139 and $728 for $927.29 a month. Because the interest rates are different, this is why I did this way, you can see that it comes out for quite a bit of difference as far as the term. This is a shorter term, so it comes out with a different rate and time because it's not amortized over such a long period of time. There are default, down here it shows an example of the amount that you put in or amounts, the interest rates for the different ones respective to the kind of a loan it is. And you'll notice that this is a 0.0. What it's doing, it's using a decimal factor to come up with the percentage rate. And in the months, it would be for the term of whatever it is of months by years. Obviously, this divided by 12 would come up with the number of months. And then it would equal the amount of payments per month per month. And then the sum to finance would be down here. And then over here, you'll see the sum over the term would be 50,000. Okay, we did something wrong there. No wonder it looked kind of odd. It's 110,000. I have 1 0 missing. So that's why it changed to $139. So it's $1329.04. So it's, you can tell as soon as you start looking down here, it starts to look a little odd. So you have to take a look at it. So we're looking at 2,180.12, and I'm sure somebody already saw that when I was doing that. So you have the sum over the term of 501 over the total term of 360 months, and the second one would be the total over the 180 months for a total of 642,988. If you had additional carries and others, then those would be listed down here in these other fields, and it would show you the grand sum of all the costs as far as you're concerned in this one. Let's go to the last thing, which is the data portal. Now again, if you have questions on this screen, please contact me. Since this is a custom app, any of these things can be changed or made different depending upon how your state or province or wherever you live requires you to have information portrayed. And I can have those changed to fit whatever your needs are. The data portal. What is a data portal? A data portal is an interesting screen that allows you to take documentation that you need to bring in or something you want to bring in to the transaction information. And basically this field here could be either a URL, it says go to URL, or a source URL. What that means is if there was a graphic that you created and it's on your hard drive, you can just click in here and or put the information for that particular item. In this case, if I wanted to insert a picture, I would click this, pick the picture, and it would be put into the graphics area over here. When I go to the portal, this image would be made large enough that I can actually read it. But this is a portal, so I can have a number of items in here. Say, for example, there's a piece of paper I want an image of. I could take my iPad, get over the top of the piece of paper, to shoot a picture of it, and now that it's on the iPad, I could bring that in here by saying insert picture and then put it into this field here, and then I'd have a copy of it, especially if that paper is going to be taken away from me for one reason or another and I'm not going to have a copy of it. I could have it in my iPad with me and bring it up if I needed it in a meeting or at the escrow company or whatever situation at closing, and I had to go back and look at that particular piece of paper. I could do that. I could put notes over here about it. Now let's look at the other alternative. Maybe there's a website or something where I want to be able to go to a website to see a specific piece of information and be able to go to something where I want to, maybe there's a website that gives me some calculation or something about houses or layouts or whatever. I could put the URL in here for that particular website, and then if I click this button, it would open up the browser and show that website on that page that I have here in the URL. So it's just a nice way of navigating, and you can have as many of those as you want to. Then you also have the ability to go to that main screen where in this case there was a document that was on the screen and I changed computers and it doesn't know where to find it anymore because it's on the computer, so it just says, it's lost. But I can always go in and say insert a picture and have something out on the desktop or whatever in documents that I can go ahead and pick a picture and just go ahead and throw it in there, and then it becomes the picture that's in there. As you can see here, I'm confirming a reservation, so to speak, here for something. So, you know, any number of pieces of paper you could have in there, and then if you wanted to take it out, you can always cut it and remove it if you had to. You can also, like I said, insert a graphic, and the last thing that is in this particular URL is a graphic based on when you go to a website and there's an image that you want to take, you do a right mouse click on the thing, and when a pop-up comes up, it'll say copy image URL. That is what I inserted into this space, and what it does is it actually brings in that particular item into this picture thing. Then I can go ahead and put information on this screen about it. So let's go back to the main screen. In this case, I have to go back to customer and then pick the property listing. That kind of concludes the listing for the property. If you do have additional questions, I'm going to be covering different screens that are in the application on the app navigation, which is the last video in this application. So that would be the next place you'd want to go. Thank you.